Welcome everyone, and many thanks for joining us to the 7th Knowledge Cafe, Decolonization of Knowledge. So far underrepresented from Global South in many different ways. The Agenda Knowledge for Development, which is strengthening Agenda 2030 and the Sustainable Development Goals, also address this issue by looking into new ways at local knowledge and the way in which large organizations in the United Nations are working in the global knowledge ecology. With this, I would like to introduce our first speaker, Charles Dhewa, Chief Executive Officer of Knowledge Transfer Africa Limited. Based in Zimbabwe, he's working at the intersection of formal and informal agricultural markets across Africa. A long-time member of km4dev core group. So Charles, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fitsum, and welcome to everybody. I want to propose two pathways for decolonizing knowledge. One of decolonizing evaluation. The notion of evaluation remains a Western notion. There's a notion of theory of change that is accompanying most of evaluation. In most cases, it's not clear whose theories and whose changes we are seeking. So we think maybe it's important to look at the theories and values of people that are supposed to be developed. What is the implication of agriculture transformation on environmental, social, and political realities needs to answer through evaluation, theories and approaches that are really rooted in developing countries. The second issue that I'm proposing is to do with decolonizing healthy knowledge. COVID-19 has strangely opened some eyes in African countries. Now, no one is flying. They are surviving on healthy systems that are in our countries, which means it's an opportunity to decolonize our health system. Once we start researching, I think knowledge can emerge from any country. It's very rare to find in developing countries innovating and producing our own pharmaceutical products using what exists. So this is what I'm putting across to say there's a lot that we can do as development practitioners, as researchers, as thinkers to really change the profile of knowledge in the world.
Thank you so much, Charles. Second speaker, Bruce Boyes, who is the editor and lead writer of the award-winning Real Knowledge Management magazine, and he has also been teaching academic English as part of the University of UNSW. He's a foundation studies program in China. Over to Bruce. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fitson. The purpose of Real KM magazine is to support evidence-based knowledge management, and we do this through presenting KM and related research in concise articles. KM research itself is very much oriented towards the global north, and in fact 2/3 comes from the United States, the United Kingdom and Europe. In particular, Africa, South America and Southeast Asia are very much absent. In parallel, there's a much deeper problem of the dominance of Western epistemology. There are fundamentally different conceptualizations of knowledge across the world linked to fundamentally different philosophies and cultural foundations. We have to realize that the way in which people think about knowledge is very different across the world. We need to look at how we can create opportunities for people to come face to face in constructive dialogue. My own journey in this regard has enabled me to, in fact, learning from Chinese students about KM constructs that are actually far more valuable. And I've also started to collaborate with the growing number of people and organizations across the world that are working on the decolonization of knowledge, and in particular, the epistemological aspects of it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bruce. Charles, for we'll be looking into the individual knowledge management for development perspectives and organizational actions. Okay, thank you so much, everyone, for your participation and the contributions. Over to the first group.
Right, we were talking a bit about the individual, changes that the individual can do. In terms of where knowledge can be accessed, we talked about if you have within your own networks, your own work networks, that's the first port of call where you originally go. There was also elements about as a way of lobbying ourselves, the fact that you can author and develop your own articles. So really being proactive, ensuring that we become aware of our own preconceptions and assumptions and our own language as we're talking. In terms of what organizations can do, we're about having a mandatory policy on knowledge decolonization. So it creates a framework, having a definition of what does decolonizing knowledge mean for km4dev and almost agreeing what are our standards within this community. We talked about the importance of translation to ensure accessibility. And then we talked about creating incentives for collaboration. So in other words, the idea that if you're having research projects or collaborating with the South, that could be a way of incentivizing.
We started off talking a lot about discussion that was had in the plenary about the top-down approach to theories of change and asking if anyone had experience with development work that had developed that theory of change on the ground with the project, with the beneficiaries. There was some discussion about looking at using innovation contracts, a commonplace practice within the private sector of having constant check-ins, adjusting your deliverables. We talked some about how narratives help with this, had some discussion about how they had used this within crisis settings before and how that worked pretty well. We also had a conversation about knowledge in sort of the academic setting, how open access has started to address some of the issues of accessing scholarly articles and who can publish, but it's still really expensive to publish, and so that is still a barrier that we need to address.
Hello everyone, this is
Hello,
Joy from Uganda. So we looked at collaboration, but in a more localized approach. Another, we looked at context-based dissemination. Here, we're looking at a huge research that is undertaken. The results and given to our district are materials that can actually go down to the practice setting. We're also looking at open publication, removing the gates or barriers to publication. If there is a story on ground, can we allow the local people speak in their local language and publish the way it is? Because when someone speaks in their local language, they're more confident. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jenny Barker. One of the things that we said was that km4dev could continue to host forums like these as we continue this conversation to bring in different sets of expertise, maybe go a little bit more in depth, incorporating some of those practices into what we do. This platform in particular could encourage and support independent tools that are reflective of knowledge from different perspectives. And finally, part of our job is to collect and tell stories of the communities that we're intending to serve globally. Maybe we need to identify different storytellers from the places where we're working, who may be journalists, for instance, as opposed to us playing that journalist role, utilizing the diverse voices, not just from the story perspective, but the tellers and who authors them.
I can just quickly summarize what was being discussed. They were talking about recognizing local knowledge to acknowledge or give value to knowledge from the grassroots. For any expression of knowledge to grassroots, it's an expression of knowledge and value. That exactly the emphasis was how to get the grassroots to encourages people to bring sources from their own local languages, how we could serve them better.
I wanted to point out the issue of low-cost innovation as a way of transforming knowledge management itself.
Yes, Fitzum, we have to close.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I know most of you also have other commitments.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.